Draft day has arrived, Blackhawks fans. Will it be Artem Levshinov or Ivan Demidov with the second overall pick?
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, a quick reminder off the top to everyone watching on YouTube right now, please go and hit that like button. Comment down below as well as to whether you would like to see Ivan Demidov or Artem Levshinov go second overall here later this evening. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well if you haven't done so already. All of that stuff that I just listed off is 100% free. It won't cost you anything and is the best way that you can show some support. And I'm really trying to grow the show right now. I'm on the climb to 2,000 subscribers. So if you're watching this, if you've been watching my content and like what I'm posting on a daily basis, please be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. And that way you also won't miss out on any of my coverage following round 1 and rounds 2 through 7 of the 2024 NHL Draft, as well as free agency, which is right around the corner as well. But good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. It's still 11 o'clock here, but by the time you're all listening to this, probably will be the afternoon regardless. Draft day has arrived, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in on draft day to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And yes, the day has finally arrived after all the discussions, after all the debates since we found out the Blackhawks got the second overall pick in this year's draft. We're finally going to see who they're selecting second overall here this evening. And as I've mentioned for quite a while now, it truly seems like it's a two-horse race between Artem Levshinov and Ivan Demidov. And when I broke down FanDuel's odds on the show here a couple of days ago, I outlined, Levshinov has been the favorite in the from an outsider's perspective. So it seems here over the last couple of weeks, and some rumblings have come out of Las Vegas that sure make it seem like that's ultimately the direction the Blackhawks are going to go with the second overall selection. Levshinov has now climbed to a minus 500 favorite on FanDuel to go second overall to the Blackhawks. We've also heard reports from Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects, I believe. I apologize if I got that wrong, but he's boots on the ground in Las Vegas. And from multiple reports out of his camp, he's heard that the Blackhawks are pretty set on Artem Levshinov at this point. However, the Blackhawks haven't tipped their hands themselves. So it's not 100% set in stone, but it sure seems like Artem Levshinov is going to be the name announced when the Blackhawks are on the clock at number 2 here this evening. And with that being the case, I think it's fitting that to kick off today's episode, I'm going to get into my second 2024 NHL mock draft. And the one that I dropped yesterday was with the Blackhawks taking Ivan Demidov with the second overall pick. And I quickly realized when going through that mock draft, I was going to have to make another one because depending on what the Blackhawks do at number 2, the entire rest of the first round, especially the top 15, completely changes. So yesterday was kind of my, I guess you could call it a wild card mock draft with Demidov going at number 2, because that does seem like an unlikely outcome at this point in time. Not impossible, but unlikely. So today I'm going to be going through my mock draft where Artem Levshinov goes second overall. But before I do, I do think it's important, Blackhawks fans, especially as someone who's been on the Ivan Demidov hype train all of this time, I want to make sure to put out there Artem Levshinov is going to be a really good player, right? And I know there are a lot of Blackhawks fans that want them to take Ivan Demidov. I'm one of them. I certainly think Demidov has the higher upside. I think the Blackhawks are in a position to swing upside and go and try and go after a potential superstar. Mark Lazarus of The Athletic came out with a phenomenal article kind of preaching the same mentality here this morning. However, that doesn't mean we should be pissed off if the Blackhawks do announce Artem Levshinov's name, because as I broke down in his draft profile, I do think he deserves to be the first defenseman off of the board. He's going to be a really good player and plays a game that translates well to the NHL level. For a player of his size, 6'2", already over 210 pounds, he moves really well out there and can play a transition style game, has an offensive mindset, a good first pass, a developing shot. And I also think defensively, he's very solid in those areas too. He's already got the physical tools to kind of hold his own against grown men. He's got solid gap control. He can provide some physicality, not like a lay the boom consistently type of guy, but he'll knock you off your feet, and he's strong in front of his net. And I, again, think he deserves to be the first defenseman off of the board, considering how well-rounded he is. And I think he's a surefire top 4 NHL defenseman who's going to play for a long time and plays a style that a lot of NHL teams would love to have out of a right-handed defenseman on their blue line. The question with Artem Levshinov is just how high is the upside? Because even though he's extremely well-rounded and doesn't have any clear-cut flaws, I don't think he necessarily possesses that one elite skill set, and it makes you wonder how high his ceiling is. And there are even questions like I have. Is he going to be the best defenseman in this year's draft, even if he reaches his ceiling? I don't know if that's going to be the case. Whereas if Ivan Demidov reaches his ceiling, he has the capability to be the best player in this draft, right up there with Macklin Celebrini if he develops and things go properly. There's so many good defensemen in this draft. I do think Levshinov deserves to be the first one off the board. I don't know if he has the highest upside out of all of them. And again, I think the Blackhawks are in a position to swing upside. So that's where my disappointment would be if they go with Artem Levshinov. It's not because of Artem Levshinov, the player. It's because I think they want safe instead of upside at number 2, when I believe they're in a position to swing upside. So we'll see what winds up happening. But getting into my mock draft where Levshinov goes second overall, again, this seems like the more likely outcome at this point in time, considering the odds, the rumblings we're hearing out of Las Vegas. Scott Powers says he'd be shocked if it wasn't Levshinov. And the Hawks have just had more experience to watch him and have interactions with him, being he was in North America. We'll see what winds up happening. But first overall to San Jose, Macklin Celebrini, no surprise. Second, the Blackhawks take Artem Levshinov. And I really don't want to see Blackhawks fans bashing Artem Levshinov on X if he goes over Ivan Demidov. We don't know at this point in time. We'll find out in 4 to 5 years. And if there's anyone to be mad at, it will be Kyle Davidson one day down the road. We'll see how everything transpires. But if the Blackhawks go with Levshinov at number 2, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens at 3, 4, and 5, because Cam Robinson has also reported the Ducks don't look like they're going to take Ivan Demidov, and neither does Columbus 4th overall. So with that being the case, I have Anaheim taking Anton Salayev 3rd overall. They haven't tipped their hand whatsoever where they're going to go. Seems like Sam Dickinson could potentially still be in the mix. This feels like if the Hawks go with Levshinov, where the draft really does start. But I have them taking Salayev. He's been picked there a ton in mock drafts. Still can get him at a pretty good number, by the way, at FanDuel. 4th overall, I think Columbus is going to shock everyone, and I think they're going to take Ivan Demidov. I think they're also in a position to swing upside. If they don't go Demidov, it's going to be Caden Lindstrom, who is the heavy favorite, but I could see Columbus being a wild card in this draft. 5th, then I have Montreal taking Caden Lindstrom. 6 overall, Utah, I have them selecting Sam Dickinson. His size, offensive abilities, and booming shot, I think, ultimately gets him selected before Zeev Buium. 7th, I have the Ottawa Senators going with Beckett Seneca. 8, Seattle, I have them taking Zeev Buium. I think he's either going 6 to Utah or 8 to Seattle. At number 9, I do think the Calgary Flames are ultimately going to succumb to the pressure and take Tijia Ginla. And then rounding out the top 10, I have the New Jersey Devils taking Berkeley Catton, should they stay home and select 10th overall. 11, we know the San Jose Sharks traded up there yesterday. And I'm going to preface again, I think it's either for Berkeley Catton, should he fall out of the top 10, Cole Yzerman, should he fall out of the top 10, or one of the big name defensemen. And San Jose really needs to add to their blue line. And if Zane Parekh falls out of the top 10, I really think they're going to take him at number 11. Offensive-minded guy. I don't want to say he's going to be like an Erik Karlsson, but they can kind of envision him as that next that with his incredible offensive abilities. And I think he does have the highest upside if he hits out of all the defensemen in this draft offensively. At number 12, the Philadelphia Flyers. I have them taking Konsta Helenius, leaving Minnesota at number 13 to take Cole Yzerman. 14, Buffalo. I think they could add a good right-handed defenseman here in Carter Yakimchuk, who's available considering what they have on the left-handed side. Owen Power, Bowen Byram. They need a right-handed defenseman to play with some of those guys. At 15, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, the Swedish connection to Detroit. I have him going there. 16, I have the Blues taking Stian Solberg once again. At 17, I have the Capitals taking Adam Jiricek, and that leaves the Blackhawks, like I mentioned yesterday, in a weird spot if it does go down that way, because Scott Wheeler of The Athletic reported that some options for the Blackhawks at 18 are Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, Stian Solberg, and Adam Jiricek. The problem is, I think Detroit takes MBN, and then 16 and 17, St. Louis and Washington, both of them have gone forward heavy in first rounds in years past, and I wouldn't be surprised if they take these two defensemen before kind of the next tier. There's a clear-cut, like, third tier after those two guys, I believe, in terms of the defensemen in this range. So I wouldn't be surprised if both the Blues and the Capitals go defensemen in front of the Blackhawks. And I'm having them draft Jet Luchenko at number 18 for the second consecutive mock draft. I outlined when I went through his profile yesterday why I think he fits the bill for what Kyle Davidson likes to draft. He's very Frank Nazar-like with his ability to impact the game all over the ice and drive possession in the other direction. I do wonder, though, I just do wonder if the Blackhawks and Kyle Davidson finally deviate from that path a little bit to get some size in the forward group. I don't know if this is the spot to do it, but Luchenko makes a lot of sense if they stay home at number 18. 19th, I have Vegas taking Michael Hage. 20th, I have the Islanders taking Sasha Boisvert. 21st, the Kings taking Trevor Connolly. 22nd, I have Nashville taking Cole Beaudoin. 23rd, I have Toronto taking EJ Emery. 24th, I have the Colorado Avalanche selecting Igor Chernyshov. 25th, I have Ottawa now making a different pick than what I had yesterday. They take Charlie Ellick after taking Sam Dickinson 7th overall. Montreal, since they selected Caden Lindstrom, I have them taking Dominic Badinka. 27th, Carolina, I have them taking Emil Hemming. 28th, Calgary, I have them taking Leo Saline Valenius. 29th, Dallas, I still have them taking Ryder Ritchie. The Rangers at number 30 with Budinka off the board, I have them taking Sam O'Reilly. 31st, Anaheim, I have them taking Tarek Parasak. And 32nd, to round things out, the Flyers, I have them taking Dean Letourneau. All right, there is my mock draft, my second mock draft ahead of tonight's NHL draft. Go and let me know your reaction to that down in the comments section. Who do you want to see the Blackhawks take at number 18? Should they stay home at that pick? Coming up in just a moment here, Hawks fans, I'll go over an outlook at the Blackhawks forward group ahead of free agency. But first, I got to talk to you all about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the championship trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and to level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll always find what you're looking for. Plus, with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or else you'll get your money back. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. With all the prices you need, with all the parts you need, at the prices you actually want, it's easy to go and turn your car into the MVP and to bring home that championship trophy. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Again, that's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only and exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S.-based customers. Segment 2 on today's episode, with free agency right around the corner as well. It is a hectic time period for you, boy. Qualifying offers are obviously due on Sunday. The Blackhawks still have some looming decisions to make in that department, but I wanted to be sure to break down the Blackhawks forward group outlook going into this weekend, especially after they acquired Ilya Mikheyev and Sam Lafferty from the Vancouver Canucks on, what was that, Wednesday night at this point now? Tuesday night, I believe it was, because things are a little bit more crowded now. And kind of one repercussion of making that trade that I don't think I even kind of recognized at that point in time. And that's why I do kind of try to sway away from knee jerk reactions. I usually try to let things calm down and get a look at all perspectives before I overreact and whatnot. But one outcome that we kind of didn't think about with the Blackhawks, bringing in Ilya Mikheyev and Sam Lafferty is, remember when going into this offseason, or even over the last couple of weeks, what have the Blackhawks been looking for out of this forward group? It was a top 6 ad and probably another top 9 ad. Well, Mikheyev nor Lafferty are top 6 pieces, but those are two bottom 6 type players that, yeah, we had, a couple of spots available, but now things are a little bit more mudded up in terms of what the Blackhawks could actually go and bring in free agency. And I'm not necessarily saying I agree with this because, look, if the Blackhawks don't get a true top 6 piece in free agency on Monday, it's going to be a very disappointing offseason all in all. They need more help on the offensive side of things than just Taylor Hall and Andreas Athanasiou coming back healthy and throwing in Ilya Mikheyev and Sam Lafferty. Like, you need more than that to go from the worst offense in franchise history to a competent offense. They need to do more than that. They need to get Connor Bedard a little bit more help. And Kyle Davidson kind of had some weird statements to say about that yesterday. He kind of contradicted himself a little bit. He said, at first, his hands are a little bit tied in terms of what they can do in free agency. It doesn't really, he didn't say they're absolutely going to go out and sign somebody. They want to make sure it's the right fit, but they need to do something more to kind of boost up this offense. But they've put themselves in a little bit of a tough spot now after acquiring Mikheyev and Lafferty. So going through a little bit of a forward breakdown in terms of the guys we know are going to be on this Blackhawks roster. So it seems at this point in time, unless a trade happens or something like that. But let's take a look at this forward group. And I'm just throwing together line combinations to shake out a roster to show how many open spots there are. So let's throw Taylor Hall, Connor Bedard, and Philip Kurashev together. That's the top line. Lucas Reichel, Jason Dickinson, Andreas Athanasiou. That's the second line. You got Foligno, Ryan Donato, don't forget about him, and now Ilya Mikheyev. That's the third line, and then you have Sam Lafferty on the fourth line. So there's now 2 open forward spots and then 2 depth spots probably. So that's 4 jobs that are available right now in the Blackhawks forward group should none of those guys get traded. And the only likely one of that group, I think, would be Ryan Donato. And then you got Joey Anderson, who's expected to return. You also have Frank Nazar, Landon Slaggert, Cole Gutman, Colton Dock making pushes for the NHL roster. Nazar, I think, is the most likely of that group, along with Gutman, Slaggert, and Dock. I could see both of them starting the season down in Rockford, but Anderson and Nazar, even Gutman, that's 3 of those spots. And then, they're trying to add another top 6 piece, which I think they absolutely have to. But outside of that, it's kind of hard to see where anyone else is going to fit at this point in time, right? Like, let's throw in Joey Anderson and Frank Nazar into the lineup now. Hall, Bedard, Kurashev, top line. Reichel, Dickinson, AA second. Foligno, Nazar, Mikheyev is the third. And then Lafferty, Donato, and Joey Anderson is the fourth, with Cole Gutman is the extra, right? Like, you see what I'm getting at? There's only that one extra forward spot still available. And that's why I think all of the UFAs are not going to be coming back. Colin Blackwell, I think his time has come to an end here. And this ultimately might cost, Taylor Radish and Mackenzie Entwistle their jobs here with the Blackhawks. I think there's absolutely not room for both of them now. And there might not even be room for one of them with Joey Anderson coming back. So we'll see what happens with the qualifying offers on Sunday with Taylor Radish and Mackenzie Entwistle. Joey Anderson, of course, is the most likely one to get a contract. I really do expect that to happen. But it's kind of just hard to picture, Radish and Entwistle, or even one of them coming back, just given the lack of open jobs for the Blackhawks. And I'm not saying I agree with that. Listen, I didn't really, again, think of that as an immediate repercussion to acquiring Sam Lafferty or Ilya Mikheyev, but there's just not a whole lot of active spots, and you'd have to get rid of one of these guys in order to make some moves. So maybe that's in the cards potentially. I don't know, but because of the acquisitions of Ilya Mikheyev and Sam Lafferty, and considering the Blackhawks don't really want to dish out long-term contracts this summer, I firmly believe there's only, so many options the Blackhawks can get to. And again, I don't necessarily agree with that, but they need to get at least one more true top six piece to help this offense really take that next step. I'd be very, very disappointed if they didn't come out with someone on that front. And I fully expect them to add a big time right-handed defenseman if they're not going to be spending like crazy. So it seems, outside of maybe one more guy in the forward department. But that's how things are shaking out for the Blackhawks forward group. It's all of a sudden gotten a little murkier than I think everyone kind of expected following the trade that got announced on Tuesday night. But there are my thoughts ahead of free agency on Monday. We'll see what kind of splashes general manager Kyle Davidson makes. I'd expect it. I hope that it's a true top six forward along with a right-handed defenseman to help out with Kevin Korchinski. Coming up in just a moment, though, before I wrap things up, I do still have to get into Cole Beaudoin's 2024 NHL Draft Profile. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about Game Time. I love sports, and I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But unfortunately, as the Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA Finals have now wrapped up, we have fewer games, and the sports just aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. And all I have to do is open up and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. How about this, Blackhawks fans? You can still get Ivan Demidov at over 7-1 to be the second overall pick. If you're holding out hope that the Blackhawks are going to call his name after Macklin Celebrini here this evening, that's a pretty darn good number. And you can even get Anton Salayev, who, as I mentioned, have been mocked to the Anaheim Ducks 4 times at plus 135. I think that's really good value. Oh my goodness. Completely realized I'm doing the wrong listing. Completely apologize to the fine folks over at FanDuel. Make sure to go and check out FanDuel.com/lockedon, though, in order to take advantage of those daily boosts and bonuses that they're going to be offering customers all summer long. And again, if you want to get in some action on the NHL draft, I think there are some really good lines out there. You can even still get plus money on the Artem Levshinov, Anton Salayev, Caden Lindstrom 2, 3, 4 order, which I think is really good value. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get daily boosts and bonuses all summer long. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Quick reminder again to please go and hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Before I wrap things up here today, though, I still got to get into my next 2024 NHL Draft Profile. I believe it's the last one that I got to get into of all the players I had mocked in the first round, and I just wanted to be sure because it was an eerie situation with Oliver Moore last year. I don't expect Cole Beaudoin to be in the mix for the Blackhawks at number 18. Maybe he winds up falling to number 34, though, and I think there could be some intrigue there, possibly mostly because, as I've outlined several times, I do wonder if Kyle Davidson is finally going to add some size to this forward group in this year's draft, and Cole Beaudoin absolutely provides that. 6'2", 210 pounds already for a kid who just turned 18 back in April, so got some really good size and meat on the bone, and he just tallied 62 points, 28 goals, and 34 assists in 67 OHL games as an alternate captain for the Barrie Colts. Maybe not an offensive dynamo, but a well-rounded skill set, and also added 4 points, 2 goals, and 2 assists in 7 games for Canada at the U18 World Juniors. Had a really strong showing at the Hlinka Gretzky tournament, and ultimately because of that, I do think he winds up getting selected in the first round. And we saw some really nice development compared to his first year in the OHL, where he only had 20 points, 8 goals, and 12 assists in 63 games as a 16-year-old. As far as the rankings go, though, some folks think that Beaudoin is going in the late 20s. I just had him mocked number 22 to the Nashville Predators because I do think he's very similar to Ryan O'Reilly, and I wonder if they could see him as the next driving force of their offense and of their organization with that selection. But some folks, some scouts and analysts think he has the potential to fall into the second round, ranked 29th by Elite Prospects, 23rd by Bob McKenzie, 28th by Craig Button, 35th by Tony Ferrari, 35th by McKean's Hockey, 27th by Chris Peters, 30th by Daily Faceoff, 36th by Sportsnet, and 30th by Dobber Prospects. Breaking down the strengths and weaknesses, though, in Beaudoin's game, the first thing that you notice is he already plays a strong, power forward, type of game for being a young lad. He knows how to use his size to his advantage out there on the ice, and he frequently drives the net with a purpose, lowering his shoulder, using his edges, leaning on the defender while being able to protect the puck. And he also has some pretty nice soft mitts to be able to finish in tight, and I think has a pretty well-rounded offensive skill set. Maybe not anything elite, although you don't really find elite skill sets, I think, this late in the draft typically, but, you can always find some diamonds in the rough from time to time. But a good passer, he sees the play really well out there. I think he's a good playmaker, but his best offensive ability, I think, at the next level is going to be his shot and the size to be able to score in front of the net. But he has a very powerful wrist shot that's developed very nicely from what I've read from multiple sources over the last year. A lot of power behind it because he's a big boy. Some pretty good accuracy as well. Scored a lot of goals from both the right dot on the power play and in front of the net. So very versatile in those areas, which again, I think could be intriguing to the Chicago Blackhawks. Also, though, what I think is intriguing to the Blackhawks is he plays a hard two-way game that it's noticeable that he's trying to make an impact in all three zones. He wants to make his presence felt all over the ice. And because of his size, I think that's going to really, what he has already is going to give him a leg up as he continues to develop to win battles in the dirty areas, go to the front of the net and score greasy goals. If he can get up to, like 220, 225 pounds, there's going to be some defensemen out there that are going to have a hard time moving this guy and taking the puck off of his stick. He also plays with a pretty good motor, some high energy. Maybe I'd like to see him be a little bit more physical, but someone who shakes up to be a good offensive player that can make his presence felt in all three zones. As far as the weaknesses, his skating from multiple reports has gotten better, but he still lacks that top level speed. I think his acceleration is the biggest thing, or the lack of acceleration, I should say, is the biggest thing that stands out to him. Like, it takes him a while to get going, and he doesn't have that top speed. And I think, that's something that's going to ultimately cap his ceiling at the next level, along with not possessing one of those elite skill sets, right? He's not a special passer. He's above average, and that's what made him a fine player at the OHL. I don't see him being a huge puck distributor at the NHL level. I think he's going to be more of a goal scorer, a guy who can score, 20 to 25 goals in a lot of different ways, can play on the second power play unit as well. But that lack of foot speed is just going to hold down his upside. He also needs to work on his puck handling, I think. In terms of like being able to lug it into the offensive zone and get around a defender, that needs a little bit of work. And then I would like to see him be a little bit more physical for a player of his size. I think that'll also help him make his impact on the defensive side of the game as well. So as far as the projection goes for Cole Beaudoin, I see him being a hardworking two-way middle six type of forward who can play both the center and the wing. Probably will be a guy who we can throw out there on the second power play unit, either in the bumper roll or at the right dot. And I do believe he has penalty kill upside as well if he kind of leans into that skill set and buys into being a very good two-way player at the next level, which I think he is capable of. But what's kind of apparent to me is when you compare him to Liam Greentree, I would absolutely rather have Greentree over Cole Beaudoin, but I think Greentree is more likely to, go in the top 25 than Cole Beaudoin is. I think Beaudoin is more likely to fall out of the first round, but I do ultimately think because of his two-way ability, because of his size and his shot, he probably goes somewhere between 22, Nashville, as I outlined, and number 30. But if he does fall as far as a long-term fit for the Blackhawks, he's not the typical prospect that KD likes. But again, I think they got to deviate from that at some point in time. And if Beaudoin is available at 34, I think his size and his work ethic, two-way ability is something that could intrigue Kyle Davidson, as well as having a little bit of a skill game. So I don't expect him to slide to 34, but if he's there, I think Kyle Davidson can do a lot worse, and they really do need to start adding players with this kind of makeup to their forward group to kind of round things out a little more. I still have FanDuel up here, man. I'm just being a bonehead here today. I apologize, everyone. That's going to take care of Cole Beaudoin's 2024 NHL Draft Profile. That's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and jump in the comment section down below. Do you want to see Lev Shinov? Do you want to see Demidov be the announcement here at number 2? And also, who would you like to see the Hawks select at number 18? I could not be more excited for things to be getting underway here later this evening. I'm going to be posting clips following each of the Blackhawks selections, and I will also be having an episode drop later on tonight recapping what went down in the first round, and also previewing some players I would like to see them take at number 34 and number 50. But until then, everyone, have a happy draft night. Stay safe. Let's go Blackhawks. Very interested to see what they wind up doing. I'll talk about all of that on the next episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.